All right, y'all, you are joining us for a very special mini-series here at PreventConnect. I am Janae Sargent, and I am joined by my colleague, friend, and oftentimes co-host, Ashley Klein-Jimenez.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ashley. We're doing this mini-series that is looking at the transformative journey of the Delta Project, a pioneering initiative by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention that's been aimed at preventing intimate partner violence. Over the course of these episodes, we are going to be exploring the rich history, innovative approaches, and profound impact of Delta through the voices of those who have been instrumental in its success.
Join us as we sit down with CDC, National Technical Assistance Providers, and past and present Delta grantees who share their unique insights and experiences. From the early days of Delta to the latest advancements in Delta Ahead, this podcast celebrates strategies that have helped intimate partner violence prevention at the community and societal levels. Ashley, I'm so excited to do this for you, and thank you all for listening.
You're listening to PreventConnect, the podcast bringing together voices from across the movement to end gender and power-based violence, to give you the tools to practice primary prevention in your daily life and at work. We're highlighting emerging research, promising strategies, and stories from on-the-ground prevention practitioners doing this work in new and innovative ways. Bringing you topics like foundational strategies to prevent violence, primary prevention and youth engagement, critical race theory and school climates, prevention in a digital age, and more. I'm your host, Janae Sargent, and this is PreventConnect.
Welcome to Delta Reflections, Shaping the Future of Intimate Partner Violence Prevention. It's our mini podcast series. And in today's episode, we are going to be looking at the experiences of people who have provided technical assistance to Delta recipients over the years. And we are so honored to have Casey Keene with us, the Director of Programs and Prevention at the National Resource Center on Domestic Violence, or NRCDV, as we lovingly refer to you all. And Casey has been with the Delta Project since its inception, which is really exciting. I feel like, Casey, we have a lot of questions for you. But thank you so much for joining us today. How are you doing?
I am fantastic. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to have this conversation.
Yay. Well, we're excited to be with you and to have this conversation with you. And I guess the first question, it's kind of a big one because I know that you have really been providing technical assistance to Delta recipients since the beginning of the project or the Delta program. And so wondering if you would share your experience and how your role has evolved over the years.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a great question. I was a young person when I started at the National Resource Center on Domestic Violence, very young. And my first role was as VONET and public education assistant. At that time in history, we got funding from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention to operate the VONET project as an online resource library and a learning community. So my role was supporting the prevention-focused listservs and resources that went along with that project. Back then, 2001, the web was really new. Advocates were just learning how to utilize the internet to support their work. And so really a lot of our training and technical assistance was around how to use the technology, basic things like how to search the internet to find the information you're looking for, how to use the VONET website, how to engage in our message boards and our listservs to get peer support. So those were the kinds of activities we were engaged in back then. The Delta program then started in 2002. So I was a new baby in the movement, and it was just 1 year after I started at NRCDV. And so since then, I've been in a lot of different roles, but every single one has really been connected to capacity building for prevention. And so I've gotten to witness the evolution of the Delta program. And I've also got to witness the evolution of the National IPV Prevention Council. And the reason I'm mentioning that is because that group really grew from a conversation among Delta recipients and national TA providers about how do we bridge the gap between those who receive prevention funding and those who do not. And this was like 10 years into the program, back in 2011, when it became really important to sort of close that gap and make sure that everybody had the capacity to do prevention work.
Can I just say that I actually did not expect you to talk about how the internet was just like a baby back when Delta was a baby and you were a baby. And that is such a fascinating piece to bring up, Casey, because in 2001, oh my gosh, we still had dial-up. We didn't really know what we were doing on the internet. That is wild. Wow.
Yep. It was a wild time. And so the evolution of these things kind of happened at the same time. And so thinking about where we are now and how we utilize technology to support our prevention work, it's a totally different place.
That's incredible. When you said that, I was thinking, especially Ashley, your comments about dial-up. In 2001, I was sneaking onto my mom's AOL and making the phone go crazy. So it just really puts so much into perspective for me how much experience you have, Casey, in this work and what an impactful role you have played in shaping one of the biggest intimate partner violence prevention projects ever. It's really cool to hear that you were involved in every single part of the inception of Delta. How do you feel then, kind of going from dial-up, people are just getting used to the internet, to now this like really comprehensive and innovative living and breathing program? How do you feel Delta projects have shaped the field of intimate partner violence prevention?
Yeah, no, thank you, Janae. It's really been profound. I would say that the shift has been profound. I think most significantly is really a basic shift when I think about it. And it's in our understanding about what prevention is and what prevention is not. And we have learned along the way that it is not something additional or extra. It's not a side dish. In fact, we've come to realize, going back to our roots, that prevention is embedded in the history and the foundation of our work as a social change movement. It's also not any one person's job and absolutely cannot be accomplished in isolation. You will never get anywhere doing prevention work alone. We all have to create the culture and the conditions for people to thrive. And it has to be happening in every single role in our organizations and at every level. We've learned that investment is really critical. And ascribing prevention to one person's job title or description is not going to shift anything. So the other thing is we've learned there's not really any limits on what prevention looks like. We understand now that prevention is really broad and expansive, and it's in everything we do, and it can be anything. So the limitlessness of prevention makes it feel a little bit intimidating, but at the same time means you have the flexibility to move in whatever direction inspires you and whatever direction you feel passionate about. And perhaps the most important shift is that we now know that the means are the end, that how we do the work, by leading with love, by building meaningful relationships, by centering those most impacted, by advancing equity, by shifting power, and embracing a mindset of abundance and humility, all of that in the way we do the work, that's what matters. That living out our values is prevention. That's the thing that's going to make the change that we're looking for.
PreventConnect is taking this conversation even further on our social media, and we want you to be a part of the discussion. Join in on the conversation on our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, where we're posting excerpts from this podcast and so many more. and asking experts, practitioners, and followers like you to share your stories and ideas. Search PreventConnect on your social media platforms to get involved.
You know, I'm not sure if you know this. I think you do. Ashley does. I was a Delta subrecipient in my first role in prevention. And so as you're sharing that, you know, I guess I just want to throw some appreciation your way, because all of those values that you described are how I came to learn about prevention. So I am a part of a generation of preventionists who were shaped by Delta. And I remember my Delta project was truly community centered. It felt so creative. It was nothing like I had expected or was experiencing. We did a social marketing campaign created with and for young boys. And I just felt so deeply impacted by Delta, and it shaped who I am as a preventionist. And so I hear these stories sometimes. It's like, it has not always been this way, and about how far we've come. And so I feel so much appreciation for the folks who helped get us there. And you're one of those people. I also know that moving prevention that much must have been so challenging and rewarding and just tough. Can you talk about some of the challenges and successes you've witnessed throughout your whole journey working with Delta recipients?
One of the main challenges really has been about making the case for prevention, why we should be doing it, why it matters, why it's important, and why it should be integrated into everything we do. We have really for a long time known that to end gender-based violence, we have to interrupt the cultural norms and the constructs and the rules that support it. We've also known it's a long game and that we're invested in it for future generations. But this deep knowing that we have based on our experiential wisdom, it is not enough to bring funders and policymakers and other partners on board just to say we know this with our whole hearts. And in fact, it has been a challenge to even make the case inside of our own organizations, shifting from a place where people, you know, in your role as a prevention educator, that you could check that prevention box by having somebody in a role like that. We know our movement has been impacted by many things, like the nonprofit industrial complex, the carceral state. We have over time really become funder driven rather than social change oriented. That is what leads to feelings of scarcity and division and competition within our movement. And so we needed to and continue to need to break that down. So that means going back to our roots. And if we can go back to our roots as a social change movement, that's where we can open the door for these practices to come through. And that takes organizational commitment and intention. And so what we needed was for Delta recipients to be able to demonstrate the promise of prevention and the impact of prevention, both internally in their own organizations and externally to those who we wanted to invest in it. So in order to do that, they needed evidence-based practice, but they also needed their practice-based evidence to be recognized and validated. And that was a significant shift on the part of CDC that I think really got us to the place where we were able to say, we know this, our deep knowing is validated by these stories and these experiences, and change is possible. And so that's why we spent considerable time building the engagement section of the Prevent IPV website, which has tools and resources to support recipients in making the case for prevention. And not just recipients, but anybody who wants to make the case that this is a worthwhile investment. We have, built tools together to help do that. And I think we're in a place now where maybe we don't need to invest as much time in making the case, which is because of all the work that we've been doing along the way to do that. So that to me feels like the biggest challenge to getting us from point A in 2001 or 2002 to point B where we are now.
Gosh, so there's like so much to respond to in what you just said, Casey. But one thing that's like at the top of my head is I'm glad you brought up Prevent IPV. I use that website all the time, probably at least every other week. There's just such a wealth of material and resources and just an incredible space to really find what you need when we're talking about prevention. And it's really an incredible little slice of the internet to help to continue to build capacity for people who are doing prevention, but to also reinforce and continue to make the case that prevention is possible, and prevention works. And, earlier you mentioned the IPV Prevention Council and the importance of bringing together those who are receiving IPE prevention funding like Delta and those who aren't, because there's so much wisdom and learning both within, but also far beyond Delta. And that is just so important, I think, when you're talking about like getting back to our roots and really thinking about social change, because that's been happening without this funding for a long, long time. One of the ways that I think you all at NRCDV has really been able to help tell the stories that are coming out of the Delta Project are the series of stories about innovations in prevention through Delta. And it's something that, every time you release a new one over the years, I get really excited because it truly is a story and I love stories. So I'm wondering if you would maybe share a little bit about those Delta stories and some of the ones that kind of stand out to you.
Oh my gosh, Ashley, thank you so much. And thank you for highlighting, how valuable you feel the Prevent IPV website is. Really, the goal there is to make prevention feel, possible, as you said, by providing the tools that people need to be able to do it. But I really feel my greatest joy in supporting the Delta recipients has been capturing their stories. Storytelling is so dear to me, and I think is the way we make change together. And so we have a variety of stories published on our website. We have 6 topic-specific stories that feature innovative work and lessons learned from Delta-focused recipients. They implemented strategies to change the environments and conditions in which people live, work, and play. And they have stories there on engaging youth, engaging men and boys, policy-based prevention, creating safe community spaces, so many different areas to explore. But really my favorite story, my favorite Delta focus story is on trauma-informed community building. This is a strategy that really recognizes and uplifts the voices and leadership of those who experience disproportionate rates of trauma due to environmental stressors and experiences of state-sanctioned violence and oppression. And the development of this story really inspired me to consider, what does survivor-centered prevention look like in our work? How can we bring survivors into prevention in a meaningful way, in a way that really guides the direction that we move in with our prevention initiatives? And so that's what I think really is the beauty in that particular story. We're now just starting to tell the stories of Delta Impact programs and recipients. In the Delta Impact program, they really focused on improving the structural determinants of health at the societal and community levels. And so impacting change at these outermost levels of the social ecology really depends on cross-sector, cross-movement partnerships. And so that's why the recipients really wanted to focus on, how can we make accessible tools for building relationships, fostering relationships with those who are poised to partner with us on advancing social change. Knowing what we know, that we cannot do the work in isolation, we know that the partnerships are critical. And so the first Delta Impact story that we published was on pay equity and a thriving wage. The next one, which will be coming very soon, is exploring health equity. And what's unique about these stories, first of all, they're completely created in partnership with recipients, bringing their experiences to life. But both are graphic illustrations. So you have a visual story, and we partnered with On the Right Mind to bring the graphic illustration components to the stories. And really what we do is explain how these issues are connected to preventing gender-based violence and explore strategies that really work to move us closer to this shared vision that we have with those we partner with, where all individuals and families can thrive. So I think what's been really interesting about the Delta Impact series is that we've been able to really dig into these components and that may not feel as connected to gender-based violence prevention as we know that they are, and really demonstrating those connections and why people should join us, that together we can really create the change that we're looking for.
So inspiring. And I love the visual aspects that have been incorporated in the most recent stories. They really, first, the art is just beautiful. And they're so talented in what they do, but it really does, I think, help make a connection differently than just reading words on a screen or on paper. So if our listeners haven't checked those out, I really, really encourage you to do that. Gosh, so Casey, I'm wondering, you have been around now watching the Delta Project transform and shift, and the field in general kind of, make those pivots and make the case for prevention. And I'm wondering, given that experience, what do you see for the future of the Delta Project? And how do you see Delta recipients continuing to innovate and lead in IPV prevention going forward?
Yeah, thank you for this question. And I have to say, I feel very old now, having been on this journey for so long, but I am in it for the long haul. And I can see some amazing things coming. So I think as we continue to think more expansively around what prevention is and how it can be done and who we can partner with to get there, we will continue to build this collective power, and that's what's going to lead to the real change we want to see. But as far as we've come, many advocates working in the movement to end gender-based violence still do not see themselves as part of the prevention work. Many don't identify with the prevention language. Many just aren't seeing that they are engaged in prevention work on a daily basis that is contributing to meaningful change. And so that's why it's been really critical. The National IPV Prevention Council, we've talked about it a little bit, they're a leadership body comprised of both Delta and non-Delta funded coalitions, community-based organizations, survivors, and just really all kinds of partners at the table there. They're working together to create a common definition for prevention, something that really can resonate with all people, something that recognizes the intersections of our work with other social movements. So, because really we think that if everyone can see their role in prevention, and if everyone can see their responsibility and the power they have to make the change happen, we can do it together. And so I think that's the thing that I think is the challenge we're facing now is, how do we bring everybody in? How do we create an inclusive prevention movement that everybody feels a part of? We know that belongingness is critical, right? And so that's what we're talking about here. Everyone belongs, no matter what your role is in the movement. And so it's bringing everybody together under that common understanding.
That is such an inspiring place to go and path to see forward. We talk all the time about how prevention provides this really transformational shift where we can be creative and where we can imagine transformational futures. And I see that when you speak. Casey, thank you so much for not only sharing your valuable insights, but also for being a part of shaping intimate partner violence prevention. You were a part of shaping my journey as a preventionist. I know likely thousands of other preventionists all over the country. Your perspective as a technical assistance provider really highlights the incredible work and the impact of the Delta Project. And I'm so excited to be a part of it and really excited to see where it goes.
Thank you so much, Janae. It's truly an honor to hear that you see me in that light. And it's just been an honor to witness this journey and be part of it. I'm really grateful. Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks again, Casey. And just want to also thank our listeners for tuning into this episode of Delta Reflections. Stay with us as we continue to explore more incredible stories and achievements of the Delta Project. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Bye.
PreventConnect is brought to you by Valor US and the Centers for Disease Control. You can find more information about this episode, along with past episodes, web conferences, and blog articles at PreventConnect.org. As we work to bring you more podcasts like this one, we need your help ensuring that this podcast and others like it reaches listeners like you. Take a second to rate this podcast wherever you're listening to it. That helps us show up on main podcasting pages and reach new listeners. And of course, if you have an idea for a topic that you'd like to see us cover, reach out to us and comment on this post on our Instagram page.